warm welcome to Kashmir Times, to our special program, To the Point, where we bring you issues ailing the society, issues ailing the world with the biggest newsmakers. Ever since Taliban has captured Afghanistan, there are questions being raised about the Islamic framework. What is the Sharia law going to do to the women? What will happen to the future of women? And Taliban has actually spoken about an Islamic framework. We really want to know how this Islamic framework is going to go ahead. Joining me now is former Chief Election Commissioner, and he's also an author, columnist, and a very progressive Muslim who has a voice which can be called as a spine. I welcome S.Y. Qureshi on the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Qureshi, my first question to you is that whatever is happening in Afghanistan and whatever Taliban has done to the country, do you see some kind of socio-religious change in that society?
Neelu, in fact, this is in everybody's mind. The images of Taliban 20 years ago, very morbid images, and the way the women were treated like chattel. So everybody dreads, including me, whether that is going to be the fate of women in this regime. But fortunately and mercifully, so far what we have heard from them are very positive signs. And in fact, I would like to reproduce exactly what the spokesman, Mr. Zabiullah Mujahid, said in his press conference. That is the only authentic account. All the rest is speculation. Now he says we are going to allow women to work and study. Very, very significant. We have got frameworks, of course. Women are going to be very active in the society, but within the framework of Islam. Then he goes on to say that there will be no discrimination against women, that they are going to work shoulder to shoulder with us. I think all these are extremely positive statements. Now let us understand what is the framework of Islam that he is talking about. Now, framework of Islam obviously means they will work according to Sharia. And what is Sharia? Sharia is the path for Muslims to follow, and it consists of four authorities. Number one, of course, is the Quran. Quran is like the Constitution. Every day they provide the basic framework, and everything, every word, every comma full stop is sacrosanct, and nobody can tinker with it, nobody can take liberty. Second tier is Hadith or Sunnah, whatever Prophet used to practice himself, or whatever he was reported to have told his followers, or the followers reported him doing. So that is a part of Hadith, or plural is, I'm sorry, plural is Ahadith.
Right.
Now these are the two basic sources. On that basis, jurists make their own interpretation, which is called ijma. Ijma is a collective. People get together and make their interpretation. And finally, qiyas, which means conjecture, the guess, which means interpretation based on the Quran and Hadith. And the interpretation, if nothing is mentioned in any of these, you make a constructive interpretation yourself based on this knowledge. So this is what Sharia is. Now let us see what Quran.
Sorry for interrupting you for 2 minutes, Mr. Qureshi, but the Sharia, I mean the perception which Taliban has given of Sharia and what we have seen between 1996 and 2001, that Sharia which people saw was very scary because it didn't give an equal footing to the women. Women were put behind the bars, women were veiled behind the burqas, they were not allowed to go to school. And in fact, whatever Taliban spokesperson has said, that the women will walk shoulder to shoulder, but there is a huge difference in between what they are saying and the situation on the ground. There was a case where the Muslim women working in the bank, the Afghan women working in a bank, they were asked to go to their homes, and they were told that the men in their family will be given a job. So how does one really reconcile to whatever Taliban is saying? Isn't the picture very scary for women?
No, quite right. These are the things which are seem to be in contradiction of what the spokesman had said in his press conference. Right. Now, these are, of course, extreme incidents we have heard about. But officially, the Taliban government has not yet come in existence. They are waiting. They are still going on with their negotiation, and the arrangements are being made. So we'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
We have no option but to believe them.
But as a progressive Muslim, you feel that there is a huge difference between Taliban 1 and Taliban 2?
Hopefully, because what they have said definitely is an improvement at what they did last time. In fact, they're talking of equality. They've said that they will be allowed to work, they would be allowed to study. So if somebody was sent back from the bank, it is in violation of this. So obviously, these guys are yet to settle down in power. Their government is yet to be formed and declared. So I think it will be fair to give them some chance. And instead of starting to condemn them, believe what they have said and pin them down on the promises they have made through this press conference. So we should keep on reminding them, okay, look, this is what you said, and this is what we understand from what you have said. Yeah.
Mr. Qureshi, but whatever images we are seeing, say, for example, at the Kabul airport, the kind of terrorist activity which is unfolding, the people are being killed. Now, these are those people who are talking about an Islamic framework. They are talking about a strict imposition of the Sharia law. What I want to really understand from you is, you know Islam fully well, and from a progressive scholar's point of view, I would really want to know from you that is there any space for the radical elements, the fundamentalist elements when it comes to Sharia law specifically?
Yeah. You know, the number one, what is happening at the airport is something different from Quran and Hadith and what the Islamic framework that they are going to follow. Now, obviously, because of uncertainty, because nobody knows how they're going to conduct themselves, and there is panic, and people are trying to flee, all kinds of people, multinationals and everyone. So, you know, the bomb attack which happened, it has come out, it was actually an attack on Taliban and not by Taliban. So that is a significant part of their politics, current politics. But coming back to our main topic, okay, what exactly do they mean by the framework of Islam which they are going to follow vis-a-vis women? Now, I would like to remind them. Now, what does Quran say? I'll just read out to you the 3-4 verses which talk of equality.
Okay.
Number one, there is an ayat in Surah Ar-Rum, ayat number 21, and it goes like this. And one of Allah's signs is this: He created for you mates from yourself, that you might find tranquility in them, and He ordained between you love and mercy. Love and mercy mutually, both of them. Now, secondly, they, your wives, are your garment, and you are a garment for them. Absolute equality. This is Surah Baqarah. Then there is another surah, ayat in a surah, Al Imran. I never fail to reward any worker among you for any work you do, be you male or female. And next part is more important. You are equal to one another. This is what Allah is saying repeatedly, that you are equal to one another. And finally, there is Surah Tawbah, the repentance, in which the ayat goes like this: the believers, men and women, are helpers, supporters, friends, and protectors of one another. Now, what more equality can there be than clearly spelled out by the Quran, by Allah Himself? And
Mr.
surely
Qureshi,
it is that we know.
Right. But Mr. Qureshi, this is a very interesting aspect which you've just read out. And these are those tenets of Islam which talk about the equality of women, which talk about the equality of a family, how there should be equal footing for all the family members. But why is it that Muslims are demonized constantly? Because when it comes to Muslim, when it comes to Islam, it seems they are vilified. And vilified word I'm using because the kind of perception which is made out for the Muslims is that they keep the women, they treat the women as a tool and as some object from which they derive pleasure. So how has that changed when centuries ago these were the tenets of Islam which you just spelt out so beautifully? How have things changed? Who has changed it actually?
Well, very, very good question. And I think there are two answers. One, the vilification is because of the Islamophobia, which is a political need of many countries and many people, and even within our country of some parties. That Islam, give them a bad name. And secondly, the part of the blame goes to the Muslims also. In fact, in an article which I recently wrote for the Indian Express, my last sentence, many people have commented on that. I said this is a case of Islam versus the Muslims, because we Muslims, the followers of Islam, have forgotten the real tenets of Islam, which I did narrated to you, and we are doing something else. If
Very
we are
interesting.
if we are treating our women badly, it is our fault. We should be judged as bad Muslims rather than Islam as a bad religion. I read out to you the religion. Religion is the Quran.
Absolutely.
And I read out to you yourself, as a non-Muslim yourself, what do you think of these? Is there any ambiguity? And if you allow me to read out 3-4 hadiths, the Prophet, sayings of the Prophet also. Now, one is from all the compilations of hadiths were authenticated by authorities, and Abu Dawud was one, Tirmidhi was another. Verily, women are the twin halves of men. This is one of these. Men and women are equal halves, Abu Dawud. Now, the third one is even more important. The most complete believer in faith is the best in morals, and the best among you is the best to their wives. Now, and finally, the very important thing, Prophet's last sermon before he passed away, he says, observe your duty to Allah in respect to the women and treat them well. That means treating women is your duty to Allah. What can be more emphatic emphasis on the status of women in
Absolutely.
Islam? And if we have forgotten it, it is our fault. And it's not Islam, but it is the Muslims who are to blame.
It's the Muslims, you say, you are to be blamed. But Mr. Qureshi, that really prods me to another question. And I'll be very honest and frank with you that I really do not know the basics of Quran and the other tenets which you just spoke about. And that's why I'm more curious to know from you that there is so much of Islamic education when it comes to Muslims. There are madrasas which are teaching Quran. There are so many Muslim missionaries which are carrying out the task of Islamic education. But why are the Muslim scholars who are involved in Islamic education not talking about these progressive aspects?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. This is something which we need to ponder over. In fact, as a child, I come from a very religious family, extremely top-level scholars of Islam. In fact, my father was the first who slightly deviated by joining St. Stephen's College, and there was a kind of a social boycott. Look, such a scholarly family, and they are going into Christian education. But then he became a bridge between modern thought and Islam. So we need people to interpret the religion in moderate language, in modern language, but accurate, without deviating from the real teaching. Now, in this context, we have heard as a child that Islam is a complete way of life. But all through our life, from the mullahs and Maulvis, what we have heard is the laws about nikah and talaq, nikah and talaq, as if nikah and talaq is the ultimate, the one, the end all or be all of Islamic law. Nothing about how to earn your living, the honesty, how to treat your neighbors, the charity. There are so many. In fact, I can send you 100 directions from the Quran and Hadith about being good human beings, but we never talk about it. The only thing, either our own creation, Islam and Talaq, or others' creation, jihad and terror. So these are the only 4 words which are used to describe Islam and Muslims.
But unfortunately, Mr. Qureshi, all these progressive aspects of Islam have remained hidden, I think, within the scriptures. People don't talk about it. And as you yourself said, that Muslims are to be blamed. So basically, you feel that the problem is with the Muslim scholars who are teaching these Islamic tenets to the people, because that's why there is such a cultural change. A Muslim means that, it's a gun-toting Muslim who puts the women behind the veils. He doesn't allow women to step out of the house. At least that's what it's seen is in the Sharia context.
Yeah, it is true. Maybe they are not, or we are not aware, and what comes out of these Islamic schools is only the talaq and nikah. So, but maybe they
Tilak,
are.
nikah, or it's a fatwa. That's what we
Yeah,
hear about.
yeah, quite right. So we need to study. In fact, this is you have raised a good question, and I would surely go and ask some ulama exactly what is being taught in these schools. Why is it that these things which are very obvious, which should have been taught, why are they not being discussed? Why are they not writing about it? Why are they not talking about it? So we need a rethink on that. Yes, absolutely.
But what I asked you was that the religion of Islam and even Sharia, for that matter, I asked you in the beginning also that does it really have space for radicals and fundamentalist forces?
Not at all. In fact, that is one of the things which is not understood by about Islam. As I said, there is a contradiction between Islam and the Muslims. So that needs to be ironed out. Now, to give you an example, Muslims are the least educated. It's a fact. In most Islamic countries, education is minimal, the least compared to others. Whereas Islam emphasized education, the very first word which was revealed on the Prophet was Iqra, read, recite, O Prophet. That is how the Quran began. And then Hadith also, the Prophet also said that acquiring education is compulsory for men and women. And another hadith that acquire education even if you have to go to China for it. Now, going to China meant that even if it is very difficult, you should acquire. The fact that a religion which gives so much emphasis on education, the word ilm and talim is mentioned, I don't exactly remember the number now, hundreds of times. Whereas jihad and these terms would be used a very, very few times. But the real focus of Islam has been diluted by the followers by forgetting those teachings that we are not even talking about them. So
But
we need.
what are the factors which are responsible for this dilution, Mr. Qureshi? Because you've observed these things very carefully, and as a progressive Muslim, what do you really feel that what have been those influencing factors which led to the dilution of Islam, which led to an aspect where Muslims have forgotten their own Islamic religion?
Yeah, oh, I don't know. This we need to study that because I cannot believe that in Deoband they are not teaching the real tenets of Islam. Because as I read out to you, it's impossible that they don't know about them and they're not talking about them. But since the sensational aspects of it, terrorism, talaq, these are the things which attract media attention, and media also goes down. And then when Maulvis are invited to these debates, basically the debate revolves around these three issues in terror and nikah talaq and all these things. So, which is why we hear only this conversation. There is no discussion on the other aspect. And maybe educated people like me should write. If mullahs are not writing, at least we should write because we have access to the
Absolutely.
Quran. In Islam, there is no official clergy. There is no clergy. We are supposed to deal directly. In fact, I have noticed, Neelu, many years ago, I was the administrator of Punjab Waqf Board, and all the mosques of Haryana, Punjab, Himachal, and madrasas were under me. So, imams were considered very backward and obscure interests. I invited them once to discuss. I told them that, look, Islam was the first religion which gave rights to women and children, but nobody knows about them. Why don't we talk about them? It's a very good idea. I said, let us do a national conference. They participated. And in a 3-day conference, the kind of language they used, which I've documented in my book, was music to my ears. And then I said, look, would you like to I said, you're so powerful. If you go to any masjid, you find that if there are 5 followers sitting there, 2 or 3 of them will be Hindus or Sikhs asking for a taweez. There is no child or the
True.
child is
Very
sick,
true.
please give me a taweez. So I said, you're such an authority figure that people come to you. How can you allow a girl to be withdrawn from a school because she has reached puberty? How can you allow a child to go unimmunized without they agreed. I said, would you like to take up pulse polio campaign? They agreed immediately, and that year, and I've documented it, and with newspaper reports from Indian Express, Hindustan Times, and others.
Yeah.
Now these people adopted Gurgaon district for pulse polio campaign, about 1,000 imam and 400 team, and the district topped the country. Officially documented and reported in the paper. If you give them the positive agenda, they are very happy and they're willing to participate. So we have to interact with them. But instead of just boycotting them or keeping them at arm's length, so we need to reach out to them as well.
Absolutely. But Mr. Qureshi, the problem is, and you yourself said during the course of this interview, that literacy level is really abysmally low when it comes to Muslims. And probably is that the reason that a common Muslim layman looks up to the imams and the Maulvis more than it would look up to a progressive Muslim scholar?
Yes, that is true. Absolutely. In fact, as I said, there is no clergy in Islam. We are supposed to study the religion ourselves and deal with God directly. And in fact, there is no professional post of an imam strictly according to Islam. Anybody can just step forward and lead the prayer. There is no paid imam. If we are paying salaries, because there are poor people and they're getting nominal salary, which may be the need of the time, but that is not strictly according to Islamic principles. Everyone should know the religion, should study the religion, and we have fallen short ourselves. And progressive people should write more articles on the subject and organize conferences and seminars. In fact, I'm planning to write an article, Islam versus the Muslims. I'm planning to write an article and pointing out all the contradictions, all the things which we are doing wrong according to Islam, which should be doing, for instance, not educating our girls adequately. If there is discrimination, it is un-Islamic. If women are being treated badly, it is un-Islamic. As I just read out some of the. In fact, if you will give me an opportunity, I'll read out to you a few things about having daughters. You know, the son preference is an evil which we have throughout the country, across communities.
But and Mr. Qureshi, the kind of societal framework in which Islam exists right now, you're not worried that you would get a fatwa from Deoband or fatwa from some Maulvi? You're not scared of that?
Well, actually, when I was writing my book, initially 20 years ago, I was warned that I may end up with fatwas, but I was very careful. You know, after all, Taslima Nasreen or Azman Rudi, they got fatwas because they were mischievous, no doubt. I'm a believing Muslim, I'm a good Muslim, and have no evil intention whatsoever. And all I have said is just quoted the Quran. Now, I have, in fact, throughout this article, I have not given any of my comments deliberately, because I am illiterate. I am not an Islamic scholar. Just an educated man who studied this, and I happen to study this in the context of my book, because there is a complete chapter on tenets of Islam on family planning. In that context, I studied all this.
Yeah, so, I've read the whole book which you have written, and I'm sure we'll do another episode of that interview with you, purely talking about your book and the population myths which you've spoken about. But Mr. Qureshi, in today's context, do you think that the time is absolutely ripe now for the progressive Muslims like you and many others who are there in the society and who feel so emphatically about Islam, they should come up and speak? And not many people are talking about it. In fact, this is a time when Taliban is capturing Afghanistan and has captured Afghanistan, and it's impacting the entire world. And people are afraid that, it will lead to some kind of a radicalization, whether it's a Muslim radicalization or it's a Hindu radicalization, but we will have a society of radicals.
Yeah, but to say that, for instance, Deoband and other institutions are not talking about these issues, that is not correct. Many times they have condemned terrorism, and only thing is that the media is very happy to lap up anything which is juicy for them. But these kind of statements coming out from the one and the seminaries are completely ignored. There are a whole lot of them. Somebody needs to document them maybe. How many times they have come out with these statements and condemning the treatment of women or condemning terror of all kinds. Because Islam is all about peace. The word Islam itself means peace. So there was every time, hundreds of times we greet each other, Assalamu alaikum, means peace be on you. The reply comes, and on you, peace be on you too. Every time we are only talking of peace, peace, peace. That is, and after that, if we have got an image of terror and militancy, now that is something we should, those who have given us this image are the enemies of Islam, and we should point them out.
But
Just to give
Mr.
you,
Qureshi, coming back to Afghanistan and the Islamic framework which Taliban is speaking about, we did see a framework of Sharia, which was there from 1996 to 2001, which was very, very orthodox and very, very repressive. And since you yourself said, and also the Taliban spokesperson has said that no, women won't be put behind the burqas and they will be allowed to go to school, they will be allowed to work. Do you really see a ray of hope this time when Taliban too is holding the mantle?
yes, actually nothing, nobody could have forced them to say what they did. The fact that they, in their opening press conference, they said this and very categorically and repeatedly, as I read out to you, we have no option but to believe them. And in fact, by talking about it, by instead of saying that no, they will not will do it, they will only do what they did. So we'll be harming the cause. We should rather remind them of the positive statement that they made, so that we pin them down on those statements, so that we don't allow them to forget those statements and keep reminding them, okay, look, this is what you said, equality to work and study. So where is it? So I think the response also has to be very measured and nuanced and intelligent, rather than just keep condemning. If you keep condemning, that's not going to benefit anybody's case.
Right. That brought me to another question, Mr. Qureshi, that, coming to Islam, and I have spoken to a number of people during the last 15 or 20 days. And many people, I came across said that Islam, the point which you raised, that it's a progressive religion, it talks about equality of women, but it also has some regressive aspects. And very conveniently, the Orthodox Muslim clerics, whether it's the imams, the maulanas, they actually try to bring out the orthodox and a more regressive interpretation. Is that really correct? Because it was politically convenient for them. It was there so that they could make themselves more relevant. Really can't understand this picture.
Yeah, regressive things, if they are highlighted by any section of clerics, we need to be concerned about it, because there may be some references. There are references to war. In the time of war, suppose an ayat is revealed on the Prophet, it will only be talking about enemy. There is an enemy, deal with him, and it may even say kill him. But in other places, when it is talking of peace, make peace with even your enemies, talk to them, negotiate with them. And there are examples when even from a point of advantage, the Prophet signed peace treaties with the Jews, for instance, and they agreed that they will live in harmony. So those are that is the complete picture which should be projected, and not very selectively. Actually, both sides are selective on this. We need to give a complete picture. And also there is always a context. We should, whenever we are reciting a verse of the Quran, we should remember the context. For instance, in the context of polygamy, general impression even among the Muslims is that Islam allows polygamy. I question it. There is only one ayat in the Quran, the only one, that is in the context of orphans and widows. When Allah is saying that treat the orphans and widows included, because in tribal warfare, men used to get killed and widows and orphans used to be left behind. So they were in poverty. That treat them well, do not grab their property, do not substitute their good thing with your bad thing, and best will be from among those orphans, marry 2, 3 or 4, provided you can treat them equally. Now everybody is aware that there is a permission and not injunction to marry 2, 3 or 4. It is a permission because at that time there was no limit. There could be unlimited number of wives. A limit has been put, and with that too with condition. Now, and this condition is that you should not marry that orphan to send her to the kitchen to wash dishes, whereas your wife is be like a queen. No. In fact, what I have pointed out in my book, that even ulama have forgotten the first condition. The first condition, from among those orphans, you can marry 2, 3 or 4. If I want to go and marry second, I'm looking for a virgin. Whereas the ayat itself says, from among the widows, you can marry 2, 3 or 4. It was a rehabilitation program for the widows and not a facility for men to enjoy women.
We are in the last lap of the interview, Mr. Qureshi, but just a little suggestion, if I could give you, that you've written a book on population myths, and probably we should attempt a book now on the Islamic myths.
Yeah, good point. Actually, that's what I said. It is up to onus is on us also to study it for ourselves. In fact, when I first made gave first lecture in India International Center, Mr. Ramchandra Gandhi, Gandhiji's son, he said, Qureshi, is a very good paper you've written, and I would like you to write a paper on Islam and environment. I promised to him that I will, promise which is yet to be fulfilled. But I think we need to write about that. There is so much in support of injunctions on the Muslims to look after the environment, how to treat animals, how to treat plant, how to treat every living being.
Yeah. So somewhere down the line, politics seems to dominate these religious tenets, and that also brings about a lot of cultural changes. But it was really a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Qureshi, and the interview was really insightful, and I really got to know too many things which I actually didn't know about Islam and Quran. Thank you so much for joining on Kashmir Times. Thank you so much.
Neelu, allow me to end on one verse from the Quran,
please,
which is relevant not only for Muslim but for India. That's right. This is in the context. This is in the context of son preference.
Okay.
You will be amazed, and you will wonder who the ayat is addressing. When one of them gets a baby girl, his face becomes darkened with overwhelming grief. Ashamed, he hides from the people because of the bad news given to him. He even ponders, should he keep the baby grudgingly or bury her in the dust? Miserable indeed is their judgment. Now, you will wonder who is being addressed. This is what is happening when a woman is pregnant with a girl child. This is how men behave across communities. And this is what Islam tried to forbid 1400 years ago. And there are a whole lot of other verses which talk of equality of girls and not treating girls with discrimination. Whole lot of them. We need to talk about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And those are beautiful lines you read out. And I'm so glad, and the people who would watch this interview would come to know about these aspects. But as you said, that we need more progressive Muslims like you to come up now and talk about what is going wrong, what is going wrong with Islam. Thank you so much, Mr. Qureshi. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Sorry, Neelu, I have to end on this one. That which even I did not know till some time ago, that a Muslim woman after marriage is not allowed to change her maiden name, because her personality is supposed to be independent. It should not get subsumed by the personality of the husband. If she loses her surname, and in many parts of India, they even lose the first name. So that much is the emphasis on women's independent status.
That's really such a significant point. And look at what is written in the scriptures and what the perception is made out to be. But I'm really running out of time, Mr. Qureshi. It was really a pleasure talking to you, and look forward to many more researched articles by you in future. And definitely, I'm going to conduct another interview on population myths. That's pending. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.